The Las Vegas Aces dynasty just collapsed in the most spectacular way possible, and Kelsey Plum basically lit the match that burned it all down. What she revealed about her time in Vegas has Aja Wilson absolutely fuming, and the details are even worse than anyone imagined. This isn't just about basketball anymore, it's about a toxic culture that drove away their best players and exposed the ugly truth behind those championship banners. Before we dive into the explosive details that have the entire WNBA shaking, make sure to hit that like button if you want more insider coverage of what's really happening behind closed doors in women's basketball. Trust me, what you're about to hear will change everything you thought you knew about the Aces. Kelsey? Plum didn't just leave Las Vegas quietly, she dropped a nuclear bomb on her way out that has everyone questioning what really went down in that locker room. During her Los Angeles Sparks press conference, she made a statement that sent shockwaves through the league. "I've been treated better than I've ever been as a WNBA player." Now that might sound innocent enough, but when you're talking about a player who just left a two-time championship team for a squad that missed the playoffs, those words carry serious weight. She wasn't thanking LA, she was throwing shade at Vegas, and everyone knew it, but that wasn't the whole story. In a recent sit-down with WNBA legend Sue Bird, Plum went even further, essentially admitting that Becky Hammon never believed in her the way she needed. She talked about wanting a coach who would say, "That's exactly who I want," when it came to giving her more responsibility and leadership. The subtext was crystal clear. In Vegas, she was always going to be in Aja Wilson's shadow, and Hammon was perfectly fine keeping it that way. Plum averaged 17.8 points, 4.2 assists, and 2.6 rebounds last season, elite numbers by any standard, yet she felt completely stifled and undervalued. What happened next would shock everyone who thought the Aces were this perfect family. The exodus began almost immediately after Plum's departure. Kate Martin, who got selected by Golden State in the expansion draft, didn't sound heartbroken about leaving at all. In fact, she called it a blessing and talked about being excited to build something new. That's not how you talk about leaving a championship culture unless that culture was seriously broken. Sydney Colson followed shortly after, and the pattern was becoming impossible to ignore. The real bombshell came when insiders started revealing what was actually happening behind closed doors in Vegas. Multiple sources close to the situation that have suggested that Aja Wilson wasn't just the face of the franchise, she was essentially running the show, and anyone who threatened her spotlight faced consequences. Plum, who had been one of the most clutch performers in Aces history, found herself marginalized whenever she started getting too much attention. The offensive system was designed to funnel everything through Wilson, and Hammon backed this approach 100%. But here's where it gets even more interesting. The timing of Plum's comments wasn't random. She had been biting her tongue for months while the trade process dragged on. She knew exactly what she was doing when she made those statements. This was calculated, deliberate, and meant to send a message. She wanted the world to know that the glamorous image of the Aces was nothing but smoke and mirrors. Behind all those championship celebrations was a toxic environment where individuality was crushed and certain players were treated like royalty while others were treated like servants. The reaction from Aja Wilson has been telling. While she hasn't addressed Plum's comments directly, sources say she's absolutely furious about how this makes her and the organization look. She's been posting cryptic messages on social media about loyalty and knowing who your real ones are, which fans have interpreted as shots at Plum. The tension between these two former teammates has reached a boiling point, and it's spilling out into public view. What makes this even more damaging for the Aces is that Plum isn't some benchwarmer complaining about playing time. She was literally 1/3 of their big three alongside Wilson and Chelsea Gray. She hit countless clutch shots, carried them through playoff games, and was instrumental in both championship runs. For her to feel this disrespected and undervalued says everything about the dysfunction in that locker room. The contrast with her new situation in LA couldn't be more stark. The Sparks immediately made her the centerpiece of their franchise, giving her the keys to run the offense and the green light to be herself. Coach Lynn Roberts told her straight up, "You're my person, let's do this," which was exactly what Plum needed to hear after years of being told to know her role in Vegas. She's not just another piece in LA, she's the face of the franchise, and that liberation shows in how she talks about her new team. But that wasn't even the most shocking revelation. Recent reports suggest that the problems in Vegas go way deeper than just ego clashes. There are whispers about preferential treatment for certain players, with Aja Wilson allegedly getting special privileges acknowledges that others didn't, from practice schedules being adjusted to suit her preferences to certain players being benched or traded when they got too close to her spotlight. The picture being painted is of a franchise that prioritized keeping their superstar happy over building a healthy team culture. The financial aspect adds another layer to this drama. Plum was making significantly less than Wilson despite being arguably just as important to their success. When she tried to negotiate for a better deal that reflected her value, she was essentially told to be grateful for what she had. Meanwhile, Wilson was getting endorsement opportunities funneled her way by the organization, further widening the gap between the supposed equals. What happened next would prove Plum right about everything. The Aces 2024 season turned into a complete disaster. They went from back-to-back champions to getting bounced in the semifinals, and the cracks in their foundation were visible to everyone. The chemistry was gone, the joy was gone, and it became clear that losing Plum had ripped the heart out of the team. Players looked disconnected on the court, and Hammon seemed to have no answers for fixing the problems. The situation got so bad that even Becky Hammon had to admit changes were coming. In her end-of-season press conference, she basically confirmed that the roster would look completely different next year, saying it's not going to be the same group probably next year. That's coach speak for this whole thing is falling apart and we need to blow it up. The dynasty that was supposed to dominate for years to come had crumbled in record time. Meanwhile, Plum is thriving in LA and making it clear she has zero regrets about leaving. She's posting about feeling loved and valued for the first time in years, which is another not so subtle dig at her former team. Every success she has with the Sparks is going to be seen as an indictment of how the Aces misused her talent, and she knows it. The impact on A'ja Wilson's legacy is significant too. She's still an incredible player, maybe the best in the league, but now there are serious questions about her leadership and whether she can actually elevate teammates or just uses them as supporting cast members. The narrative has shifted from her being the face of a dynasty to being the reason that dynasty fell apart. That's gotta sting, especially when she sees former teammates flourishing elsewhere. But here's what really has people talking. This might just be the beginning. There are rumors that other current Aces players are already exploring their options for next season. Chelsea Gray's name has been mentioned in trade talks, and even some of the younger players are reportedly unhappy with the culture. If the exodus continues, Vegas could go from champions to lottery team faster than anyone thought possible. The league as a whole is watching this situation closely because it could reshape the entire landscape. Teams that missed out on Plum are kicking themselves, and everyone's wondering who the next domino to fall will be. The Sparks went from afterthought to contender just by adding one player who was desperate to escape Vegas. Imagine what happens if more Aces players follow suit. What makes this even more fascinating is how it contrasts with what's happening in Indiana with Caitlin Clark and the Fever. While Vegas is imploding due to ego and jealousy, Indiana built a genuine team culture where everyone supports each other. Clark and Aaliyah Boston have shown what happens when stars actually elevate their teammates instead of demanding all the attention. Sophie Cunningham brings that same unselfish energy, and it's no coincidence that the Fever's chemistry is through the roof while the Aces are falling apart. The timing couldn't be worse for Vegas either. With expansion teams coming in and the league getting more competitive every year, they can't afford to be in rebuilding mode. But that's exactly where they're headed unless they can somehow fix the toxic culture that drove away their best players. And with A'ja Wilson signed long-term and apparently unwilling to change her approach, it's hard to see how things get better anytime soon. Kelsey Plum's revelation has exposed the ugly truth about the Las Vegas Aces. They were never the happy family they pretended to be. They were a ticking time bomb of egos and resentment, held together temporarily by winning but always destined to explode. Plum just happened to be the one brave enough to light the fuse and tell the world what was really happening. The fallout from this is far from over. Every game between the Sparks and Aces next season is going to be must-watch television. The bad blood is real, the stakes are high, and Kelsey Plum has made it clear she's got receipts. A'ja Wilson might be furious now, but wait until Plum starts dropping 30 points on her former team while leading LA to the playoffs. That's when things are really going to get interesting. If you think this drama is crazy, wait until you hear what other secrets are about to come out about the Aces organization. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next video where we expose even more shocking details about what really went down in Vegas. Drop a comment below and let us know. Do you think Kelsey Plum was right to call out her former team, or should she have kept quiet? The WNBA will never be the same after this.